You're watching the Heart of GAFCON on the Pastor's Heart. My name is David Ould. We're brought to you by Anglican Aid, who are supporting more than 140 projects in over 40 countries with aid development and Bible training. You can find out how to support this important work by heading to their webpage, anglicanaid.org.au. Now, we turn to Europe and England, and I've got Bishop Andy Lyons with me. Hello, Andy.
Hi, good to see you.
Andy is the GAFCON appointed bishop for Europe. Andy, you were pretty new to the job in GAFCON 2018 in Jerusalem. You pretty much started when we gathered there 5 years ago, and a lot has happened, I know, in those last 5 years, and I'm very keen to talk to you about all that growth and all that's going on. But first, let's just find out a little bit about you. I was learning a bit about your background, and I think it's safe to say that you are the only bishop here at GAFCON who is a graduate of the Royal Military College in Sandhurst. Why don't you tell us about that journey from, I think, driving tanks to standing here as a bishop today?
Yeah, well, the Royal Military Academy Sandhurst is where all British Army officers do their basic training as infantry officers, and after that you specialise. I went to join tanks and lived in Germany in the Cold War, facing, guess what, the Russians across on the eastern side, and waiting for their huge numbers to roll in our direction.
Covering the Fulda Gap, is that what you were doing?
Yes, I'm amazed you know about it. Yes, I think I am probably the only one here who has been through that, but not many people know about the Fulda Gap.
Okay, so driving tanks, maybe shooting some guns, and how did you end up being a bishop?
Well, I was never very good at the shooting of the guns. I couldn't really point very straight, and my crew had to carry me through it, and eventually they made the hole in the top of the turret a bit smaller so that I was a bit more like a cork. So it was clearly time for me to move on. From there, I'd met during an expedition from the army in northeastern Peru in 1985. I'd met my future wife, and together we went to Bible college and then trained in Spain in Spanish, and offered ourselves to the South American Mission Society to send us wherever they felt most appropriate, and that happened to be Paraguay. We'd never met a Paraguayan before we went, and we went to serve in the Anglican Church of Paraguay for 9 years, it turned out, doing low-level Bible training, and eventually the bishop ordained me because I was also pastoring the English-speaking congregation, and we returned with our 3, at that stage, young kids to England. They weren't returning. This was their first time really to live in England in 2000, and I was appointed as the Mission Director of Crosslinks, which is a mission society, formerly known as the Bible Churchmen's Missionary Society, which rose really from very similar issues to what GAFCON is about these days. This was in the 1920s, of course.
Yeah. So, Mission Director of Crosslinks, is that right?
Yes.
Okay, and what did that job involve?
So I was involved in really interviewing, selecting, preparing, orientating, and then deploying gospel-hearted people who demonstrated the character of Christ, and deploying them in all sorts of situations around the world. A bit like I had been deployed, I was doing it for other people while I stayed at home.
So how long did that go on for, and then what changed? Because then a call came, didn't it?
Yeah, I did it for 18 years in total, and actually very early on I was rung up by a vicar in the Church of England who said, look, our bishops want to plant a church in central Sheffield, actually, which...
That's where I come from, yeah. Hello, everybody in Sheffield. Good to see you.
And the bishops, though, felt unable to give public backing to that, and so the vicar came to me in Crosslinks, because we were a recognised Anglican Mission Society, so to take on that, take on some sort of loose Anglican affiliation. So we took on that congregation and then a whole host of others around the country, with a view to seeing them perhaps reintegrate or integrate within the Church of England, but that only happened very rarely.
I wonder if I can just step you back a bit. So what was the issue that was going on there that meant that bishops weren't happy to have new congregations being formed?
Well, this was an area in central Sheffield that was already every square inch or metre of the UK is covered in a parish. And of course this was a parish where there would have been a parish priest or presbyter, and therefore it was going to be planting in someone else's patch. Now, technically now they have what's called Bishop's Mission Orders, which enable them to overrule a local parish priest, but often they don't. On one occasion, this was in northeast London, the local minister referred to us being responsible for planting in her area was like the invasion of Poland.
Wow. So you guys were the Nazis then. So just to clarify, so what's going on is you've got these areas where there is a Church of England parish, but there's no recognizable gospel ministry going on, and there's this real need to get a real proper gospel ministry in there.
Yeah, it's one of the underlying issues actually. When I went to Sydney a few years ago, during the last 5 years actually, it was lovely not to have to work out, is this a gospel preaching church when I would go to church on a Sunday, wherever we were, whereas in England you just can't take that for granted.
So what I'm hearing is you get more and more little congregations under your, well, let's call it oversight, and somebody somewhere puts two and two together. What did that look like?
Well, I'd been involved in GAFCON from the beginning, so I was at 2008, 2013 when the Anglican Mission in England was recognised, and I was appointed the General Secretary. That was one of the features of GAFCON in Nairobi, so it seemed very natural when in 2017 the Scottish Episcopal Church made its doctrinal change at their synod, and they had already anticipated this and had appealed, a number of them, to GAFCON for help. And
Scottish parishes had appealed when the Church of Scotland, the Episcopal Church, in Scotland said, we're going to change the doctrine of marriage.
Yes, I mean the Scottish Episcopal Church is very small, and there weren't very many even of them who wanted the provision that has been offered, but there were a number that did, and they had asked Canterbury for something which had not been granted, and so they came to GAFCON, and therefore GAFCON said, oh, well, let's provide a bishop for them, and this guy also happens to be looking after some English groups in the Anglican Mission in England.
Right, and so that's how it happened. And what are you now responsible for today?
Well, interesting, in those days, you see, I still am a missionary bishop of GAFCON movement, and I didn't have any official role with even the churches that were looking to me for oversight, because I didn't have a license to offer other than the Anglican network in Canada. So I was a bishop of the Anglican Church in North America, and particularly of the Anglican network in Canada. So what I was offering was a license under Bishop Charlie Masters, the diocesan bishop, my diocesan bishop there.
Okay.
So that was how that came about. How things have gone? Well, obviously, in 2020, during the COVID time, actually, we used the time very well online, an awful lot. First of all, I think for me, getting to know people that I was going to be responsible for all over Europe. So and we had weekly clergy calls for the different groups. We did Bible study, we prayed together. We got to know each other really quite well. So that was a great bonus for us of that. And at the same time, a group of us were working on canons and constitutions for what were going to be known as two convocations. One, the Anglican Mission in England, which was the mission society that was going to become what is now looking to be a diocese, and the Anglican Convocation Europe, which was going to cover both geographically a different area, but also the full breadth of the Jerusalem Declaration. So you may want to ask me questions on that.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot we could discuss, and so unlimited time. So now you're looking after not just churches in the United Kingdom, but also across Europe as well. And more recently, we've appointed some extra bishops.
Yes.
So Lee McMahon, I understand, was appointed as a bishop, but also Stuart Bell. Although I do understand there was a bit of difficulty with his appointment. Tell us about that.
Well, there was no difficulty with his appointment. It was more the reaction of of his former curate, the Archbishop of Wales, of the Church in Wales, and the fact that they produced an ad clerum, which was basically creating some distance between Ace, which is where Stuart is serving, and the Church in Wales. And actually, that has basically promoted Stuart and his ministry, because he's already had 50 years of long and effective ministry for Christ in Wales. He's utterly committed to the Welsh. He's a fluent Welsh speaker, although he's an Englishman, and is so it was a very moving occasion, really.
So it's causing ripples, but then we expect it to do that, don't we? Now let's talk a little bit more specifically about the presenting issue in England, because it's kind of brought things to a head. When you were appointed 5 years ago now, we could see where things were going, although I'm not sure if we understood the speed. But how would you summarise the position that we're in now with the Church of England?
Well, in very simple terms, the College of Bishops, which is the full range of bishops in the Church of England, so that includes assistant bishops and so on, were basically given the choice of, let's indicate the direction of travel, and their decision was to promote the agenda of living in love and faith, and a way by which pastoral provision could be made for those who wished to be able to recognize and bless same-sex relationships, and at the same time as that, to hold together with those who couldn't agree on that. So that was their proposal, came out in January. February, that was debated in the General Synod. I watched with interest from outside, and partly through the way that the Synod was managed, by the way I looked in, it was the proposals that the bishops made were approved in all three houses, and with a degree of delight.
In fact, the Archbishop of Canterbury said he was joyfully greeted this move, and obviously has caused a great deal of upset. So you say from the outside, because that's what you are. You're no longer in the Church of England.
I lost my license in 2017.
Yeah. As you see it, what options are there now for faithful Orthodox Anglicans, both clergy and lay, within the Church of England?
Well, this is where one of my other roles is. So yes, I'm primarily responsible for the Anglican network in Europe with the two dioceses of Ace and Amy, but I'm also the regional GAFCON secretary for Europe. And that means, as GAFCON has always meant, it is supporting the Orthodox who agree with the Jerusalem Declaration, whatever their current position is. And so the vast majority in England would be from within the Church of England. And so we're there to support them in that, but it's an informal support. Because I'm not going to be able to exercise episcopal ministry to ordain and do those sort of things, much as people would like it to be the case.
Sure. So what options do those people now have? I mean, the congregations you do look after, they're outside their structures, but those that are inside the Church of England now have some big choices. What options are open to them?
Well, in some ways, I'm probably not the best person to ask about that, because there are lots of discussions and debates going on within the Church of England. I'm here to provide what is a safe home, as well as to hold out the light of Christ to a needy continent. And we are there for people who need us. Now, I'm aware that the Church of England Evangelical Council has brought together a broad coalition. Some are much more sort of in your face. Others are wanting to do things much more gently. And there's a whole spectrum in between. My difficulty is I'm not member of the CEEC, and therefore I'm not privy to those conversations, although I'm obviously hearing secondhand.
Yeah. So if people feel in good conscience they have to leave the Church of England, you may be one of the places they go to, but they've got their own decisions to make, perhaps internally as well.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, well, let's talk about the conference we're actually at. It's Kigali, it's Rwanda, it's 2023. What are you looking forward to most at this conference?
It comes back in many ways to my Crosslinks years, and I made lots of connections in the Anglican world around the world, and I just love seeing it. I mean, it's been hard work, because as I age, my memory of names, which was renowned in the past, has somewhat eluded me. And
That's why they give us all name tags, I think. Yeah.
that's right. So I love being amongst people like this, and because I was there in 2008 and really experienced that moment when people said, yes, this is what we're about. We don't have to apologize for being Anglicans. This is it. Yeah. So that there is that excitement of being amongst them. But I'm hoping for real clarity. I think I would love clarity between in the relationship and interrelationship between GAFCON and Global South. Yep. Because I think for some, the Global South seems much more attractive. It's much gentler, although they've spoken very strongly.
Well, they almost raced GAFCON to the line, didn't they, to make a very strong response to the Archbishop of Canterbury, yeah.
I'm thrilled that they did that, actually, and that's great.
Yep.
But there is a perception, because they are still largely within the Canterbury aligned structures. They're seen as being the sort of slightly softer and this slightly less hard-edged GAFCON, and I'd love to see that change, because we believe the same things. There have been reasons why it has ended up as it is, but I'd love to see a really close collaboration of some sort.
So all sorts of relationships, just the old relationships with all the ministry partners, the actual relationship between Global South and GAFCON, and then there's a communique coming, obviously, a statement coming at the end of the week. What would you like to see in that, particularly as we think about the situation in England? What do you think would be most helpful there?
Well, in many ways, GAFCON have already given very clear backing to the Anglican network in Europe as their provision for the Orthodox in Europe. And it would be lovely to see that reinforced, because I think people in England are going to be tempted to look anywhere else but us, actually, strangely enough. I mean, we're trying to offer a kind of genuine relational episcopacy with a proper oversight and a proper accountability. But I guess we've got used in the past to looking elsewhere in the world, perhaps having a more distant episcopacy. I mean, many Anglicans in England have got by avoiding bishops as much as they possibly could. Yes. And that's going to be a habit that's going to take a bit of breaking.
Yeah. Interesting times ahead. Bishop Andy Lyons, thank you very much for joining us on the Heart of GAFCON.
Good. I hope it's gone well.
We'll be right back with you after this message.